Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, I'm going to be continuing my talks about various different episodes. Chronologically, I have made my way to season 7. I already covered and talked about episode 1, so this is about episode 2 from season 7, The Calling. The Calling was written by Kathleen Hite and directed by Gwen Arner. The two primary storylines in this episode are one takes place in basically the mill where Ben is covering for Daddy, who has other things going on. So John pretty much puts Ben in charge, and Ben says there's too much work for him to get done. And so John suggests that he hire someone to help. And Ben's never done this, but John said, well, go figure it out. So that is one of the storylines. And the other one deals with Jim Bob, who has met a cousin of the Baldwin sisters, Mary Frances, and the attraction and affection that he develops for her along the way. As we are first introduced to Mary Frances, we see a shot, a wide shot. I've talked about establishing shots. So this establishes the Baldwin's house. Now, this, I believe, was on the Columbia Ranch lot, which was a couple of blocks from where Warner Brothers Studios is, and was used for certain locations that weren't available on the Warner's lot. And one of those houses was the Baldwin's house. Now, when you look at this, this shot here, on the right side of the frame here, you see what looks like some sort of equipment is what it sort of looks like to me. And I'm wondering if we were seeing something because of the size of the frame. Now, I have mentioned that back when The Waltons was being filmed, because all TVs at that point were square, when a camera operator would look through the lens of the camera, he would see different framing sizes. So he would see sort of a square framing size that would indicate what a regular TV would see in its frame. So then beyond that, you would see boundaries for if you were shooting for film. And so you were going to be on a different aspect ratio for the sort of horizontal framing of film. And anything that was in that extended side portion of the frame was not going to be seen on a regular TV. So the camera operator didn't have to worry if, say, a boom mic was sort of visible in that section of the frame. And in this case, I'm wondering if that was the case here, that this equipment was out of the square frame, but in the rectangular frame, and that then when they created, when they started extending the size of the frame for today's TVs, that it somehow became visible in the wider framing of it. Just my speculation on it, because I don't think they made that many mistakes about things that weren't supposed to be in frame, but that also happened. So here we get our first look at Mary Frances, who has come to visit them and who plays a pivotal part in this episode. Jim Bob is out flying a kite, and as they're moving towards the house, Mary Frances sees this kite up in the air. Now, this would have been another editing situation where we see her looking up at the sky, but then when they turn around to show us what she is looking at, that would have been filmed at a different location, which I believe was Franklin Canyon, where they filmed those exterior shots of Jim Bob flying the kite and where that big sort of water is that we see later in the episode also. So she would have pretended to be looking at a kite flying, and then when Jim Bob was out there flying the kite, it was shot on a different day in a different location. Jim Bob's kite gets caught up in a tree, and he can't figure out how to get it down. Back at home, Ellen is in this episode. It's another episode where she came back to do some scenes, and he is asking her if she has silk because she's working on something with fabric, and she's like, yes, and she pulls out this beautiful silk, and he asks her if she has more, and she's like, yes, and then he tells her that it's going to be for a kite, and she takes it all back because she's not going to let her good silk be used to make a kite. The Baldwin sisters come to speak with Olivia because of Mary Frances. She's 17 years old, and they realize they don't really know how to talk to a 17-year-old. And because Olivia has all these children, they think that perhaps she can be of assistance in what they would recommend about how they engage with Mary Frances. Heading back to the area where his kite was caught in the tree, Jim Bob discovers that Mary Frances is up the tree trying to retrieve this kite, and she has now gotten herself stuck. So Jim Bob, being a knight in shining armor, says, "Hang on, I'll come up and rescue you." So he climbs the tree. Now, as I was looking at this scene, it made me wonder how exactly they shot this, because he clearly is climbing the tree, or someone who looks like Jim Bob is climbing the tree. That's pretty high up there. So it made me wonder if they used stunt doubles at all, or if they did indeed put both of these actors up this tree, which was also entirely probable if they both said, "Yeah, sure, I can climb that tree." Now, when we get into the closer shots, I also wondered if this was done up the tree, or if they somehow created a situation with different branches or things that were closer to the ground where they could get these close-ups. Because otherwise, I mean, they could use a big crane out there and, have the camera operator up there shooting up high. And it's also possible that they did that. So perhaps I will reach out to David and find out what he remembers about how they might have shot this. Back to Ben's dilemma. He is at Renshaw's picking up supplies, and he meets Bo Pauley, who seems like a very affable sort of guy who is looking for work, and says that he has experience in mill work, so Ben hires him. One day, as Olivia is out and about, she comes across Mary Frances, who is by this water at Franklin Canyon, and she is praying. Olivia doesn't want to disturb her, but she does end up having a conversation with Mary Frances while she is there. Now, I did notice that this dress that Mary Frances is wearing looked very familiar to me, this fabric. And I thought, I had a dress like that with that fabric. I wonder if it's the same dress. And so I looked back, and it looks like the same dress to me. It's also possible that the wardrobe department had a lot of this fabric and they made another dress, but it seems odd that they would make the same style dress. So I'm thinking that perhaps it was the same dress that I wore. And I looked back, and I wore this in The Awakening. This was the dress I was wearing for that first kiss when I met the young college boy when I was at Druscilla's Pond. I also wore it in The Burnout. It was one of the dresses that I saved from the fire. And when I was staying with Doc Vance and his wife, I was wearing it there in some scenes. You can never go wrong with adorable baby scenes. And in this episode, there was another adorable scene with John Curtis. At this point, as we are beginning season 7, we are now using Michael and Marshall Reed, the twins that were with us from this point in season 7 all the way through the end of season 9. Jim Bob comes bounding down the steps one morning, all with his hair slicked and looking very sharp, which of course draws everybody's attention. He says he's going to the library, but in fact he is going to pick up Mary Frances and take her in his car to the library, actually in Rockfish, because they are going to read up and study about how to make kites. They stop by Ike's store. Mary Frances has a letter that has arrived for her from the convent. She's written a letter requesting some sort of answer or advice. And so Cora Beth sees this letter, and Mary Frances just clarifies that, yes, it's from the convent where she goes to school. And now we see this very snooty side of Cora Beth, who is very nose in the air about finding out that Jim Bob is going out with that Catholic girl. She's just scandalized about that prospect. While Bo has seemed to be a wonderful worker and Ben is thrilled with him, he's always in a good mood, he's always whistling or singing, things like that. But then at the end of the day, when things are shut down for the day, we see Bo, who has hidden a bottle of some form of liquor, dig that out and start drinking. So we are beginning to see that perhaps this isn't going to work out quite the way Ben had hoped. At church, Olivia sees the Baldwin sisters and has a little conversation with them about Mary Frances. And then Cora Beth comes hurrying up and wants to have a private word with Olivia. She wants to share the gossip that she now has found out and discovered. She thinks she's going to be sharing something new with Olivia about how Mary Frances is Catholic. Well, Olivia beats her to it and says, you mean that Mary Frances is a Catholic? So Cora Beth is a little deflated by that and wants to have a further conversation. And Olivia basically cuts her off and just says, I think we need to go to church. While they are in church, meanwhile, Jim Bob is out with Mary Frances and they are flying a new kite that they have built. And Jim Bob confesses that he really likes her to Mary Frances and he kisses her. Not able to let go of this subject, we are back in Ike's store and Hank, the Reverend Buchanan, is there. And Cora Beth is going on and on about the danger to their way of life that Mary Frances, being a Catholic, brings to the community, how this is somehow going to really disrupt the community. And Hank it kind of shuts her down as well. I did also notice in here that our lovely recurring extra that we have seen multiple times is once again featured in this scene as one of two customers that are sort of standing listening to Cora Beth rant on about Mary Frances and the dangers and evils of someone Catholic in their presence. As this scene continues, two nuns arrive in their habits, and now Cora Beth really has something to go on about. The sisters have come to see Mary Frances because of the letter that Mary Frances wrote to them. Rather than just replying with a letter, Sister Scholastica has decided this is a great opportunity to go on a little road trip, and she brings along one of her fellow sisters. So Sister Scholastica has a conversation with Mary Frances, who is struggling to decide if she will pursue becoming a nun, and pretty much wants Sister Scholastica to give her advice and tell her what she should do. But she basically says that, it's really up to Mary Frances. Meanwhile, Sister Teresa is talking with the Baldwin sisters, who are Protestants. So there's a very sort of awkward conversation there for Sister Teresa, who doesn't quite feels like she is out of her element and is much more comfortable hiding away in the convent and isn't as comfortable out in the world at this point. At the end of the day, Ben and Bo go out to the Dewdrop Inn one evening, and Bo gets very drunk. Ben drives him home and says that he's going to bring him to his house to basically sleep it off. And so they bed down in the mill because Ben doesn't want to go into the house and wake the family or whatever, nor does he want them to know that he's had some drinks necessarily. But Ben also, I think, wants to keep an eye on Bo, make sure that he's okay. But Bo wakes in the middle of the night and goes looking for his stash of alcohol and creates all kinds of damage, knocking things over and just really creates a little havoc there in the mill. And in the morning, John comes in to find this mess that Bo has brought about while he was drunk. And Bo is now missing. And John basically says there is money damage because the blade things and nails and things have fallen into it, so it needs a major cleanup. And John is tasking Ben with getting this sorted out, and also the fact that extra work has been made, and wants Ben to fire Bo. And Ben doesn't know how to do this. He says, well, you hired him. It's up to you to fire him. Sister Scholastica, we see flying the kites, and she's clearly a very outgoing, adventurous sort of personality. And so she enjoys things like this. And she hands the kite off to Mary Frances and to Jim Bob. But she really recognizes and sees the attraction between Mary Frances and Jim Bob, and recognizes that Mary Frances has a definite decision to make about her life and what is going to be the right path for her. Back to Ben's dilemma. He now needs to fire Bo, and he does, but he does it in a very kind, gentle way, and finds that he has found out that Beau has been fired before because of his drinking problem. And he basically says that he pays him his wages and says that Beau really needs to, straighten out his life. And he hopes that he does. And he sends him on his way. Mary Frances tells Sister Scholastica that she has made a decision and that she's going to pursue becoming a nun, and she feels that Sister Scholastica will be very happy about that. And basically, Sister Scholastica says that's not what it's about, that she really, it needs to be the right choice for Mary Frances, not because she thinks it's what anyone else wants of her. And so she really leaves that with Mary Frances to work out for herself, just what's the right path, that there is no one right answer. It's what is the right answer for Mary Frances. Jim Bob confesses to John that he thinks he's in love with Mary Frances and he doesn't know how to tell her or what to say. And John suggests perhaps he put his words on paper, that maybe that will help. And John talks a little bit about how it was for him and Olivia when they were first courting and what he did. And he said basically there was just a point where he had to tell Olivia how he felt. Meanwhile, Mary Frances wants to write a letter to Jim Bob, letting him know her decision, saying goodbye, and is basically urged to face him herself, and that she really, he deserves to hear it from her. So Mary Frances does meet up with Jim Bob to say goodbye. Jim Bob has more or less told her that he loves her, but although she's flattered and she really likes him, she is going to return to the convent to become a nun, and that is really her calling, and she recognizes that. So Jim Bob is heartbroken, but what can he do? So a little bittersweet ending there, and a tough one for Jim Bob. Jim Bob didn't have a lot of luck in love. He had some tough ones there between Mary Frances here, and then when he had a major crush on Betsy Randolph, and his relationship with Patsy Brimmer didn't pan out. So, Jim Bob was kind of the one that never really found love. Our guest actors in this episode, of course, Joe Conley and Ronnie Claire Edwards were back as Ike and Corbeth. Mary Jackson and Helen Klebe were back as Miss Mamie and Miss Emily. Peter Fox back as Reverend Hank Buchanan. Mary Frances was played by actress Stacey Nelkin. Sister Scholastica was Jeanette Nolan, who was a regular on The Virginian and over 300 different TV shows, and received 4 Emmy nominations during the course of her career. Sister Teresa was Mitzi Hogue, and Bruce French was Beau Pauley. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons as I speak about the episode The Calling. If you are enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe if you'd like to know when I am posting. Usually it's Mondays and Thursdays. I will see you next time for more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I'll be handling more of your questions in an Ask Judy segment, and I have some more special guests coming up. Thanks for watching.